Hi guys. I want to take just a minute to discuss a few ideas that are going to help you going forward in this class. And I think if you take additional history classes, you might find these thoughts helpful as well. Just a few things to keep in mind as you approach the study of history. In my announcement at the beginning of the week, I made the comment that history is a foreign country. And I don't mean that just if you're studying the history of other parts of the globe. I mean, even U.S. history. I want you to consider it as though you're approaching learning about a foreign country. If you're about to travel to a country you've never visited, you know you're going to experience different culture, different social structures, different values and morals, different language, and quite often different religion. When we approach the study of history, all history, we have to approach it with the understanding that the people who lived in the past, even 1980s United States of America, lived under different social constructs, different foundational belief systems. Many of those have carried over consistently, some have changed. And you need to approach the study of history in that place and time. You need to approach an event or a person or a series of events in the place and time, culture, social values, religious beliefs in which it happened. If we apply our modern values, morals, belief systems to the past, we're never going to really understand the people and events in the past, how and why they developed the way they did. We might end up wasting all of our time worried about differences in gender role. Well, I don't have a lot of patience for gender studies in history. Because most of those studies spend all of their time lambasting the fact that different gender roles existed, that women had a different place in society than men. Well, it's just a fact. They did. What I want you to understand, or try to research and try to understand, is what social constructs, what belief system, what values led to different gender roles. How did the society benefit? Because I can tell you right now that the reason for this example, men and women had two different roles, gender roles in society, was because it benefited the society as a whole. It was often about survival. It was about caring for children. It was about dividing tasks in the most logical manner based on their reality, the world that they lived in. So criticizing them is not going to help. Understanding them, researching why and how things were the way they were, that's beneficial. That is where I want you to put your time and energy. It's very important to try to let the past, the people in the past, speak to you. As a historian, when you dive into primary source documents, when you dive into the written record of the place and time in which these events occurred, it's important that we sit back and let the past speak to us. Let them tell us what was going on. Because if we go in there with the idea that we know better than they did, we'll never understand what was going on. We won't understand the events. And I think this is really important. One example of this that I'd really like you to think about is the founding of our nation. How did the founding fathers come to the idea to separate from England? What drove this? How did the founding fathers lay the framework for a society that would be very diverse, that would embrace so many different religions and cultures and ethnicities and pull them into one great big experiment? This had never been done. There had never been an attempt in the history of the world to merge religions and cultures and ethnicities from all over into one place. Hey guys, I apologize. You probably hear my rooster out there. This is a working farm, so sometimes my videos will have critters in the background. Okay, so back to my topic on the American Revolution. One of the ways we need to understand the American Revolution is tracking the history of ideas. That's a huge field of history. What were the founding fathers reading? Who was influencing their thought? We spend a lot of time on this, going back and trying to understand based on their book collections, their written records of what they were reading, who the Founding Fathers were reading. And because of this, we know that the ideas, the ideology that drove the American Revolution stretched back hundreds of years and were influenced by both the Enlightenment and the Protestant Reformation. So there was a religious and a scholastic influence. And the scientific revolution was dramatically important to the development of the ideologies that drove our founders. They were very well-read men. The American founders had such a breadth and a scope of what they were reading that it's really awe-inspiring. One of the best historians on this is a guy named Gordon Wood. He wrote a book called The Ideological Foundations, or The Intellectual Foundations of the American Revolution. Gordon Wood, he's good. He also wrote this book, The Radicalism of the American Revolution. And this is an amazing book. And in this book, he talks about the very previously unknown or unimaginable reality of a society that the founders created following the revolution. The structure of society. Historians now consider the civil rights movement not something that happened in the 50s and 60s. We call it the long civil rights movement. That the American experiment, from its very onset, was attempting something never done before and attempting to assimilate so many different people and cultures that it took a long time for things to mesh, for people to learn to live with one another. That diversity was a process that is still not found elsewhere in the world. We're very unique in our attempt to incorporate so many different people into our American dream, and that this was a completely radical concept. The structure of our society, the structure of our Constitution, unimaginable. But some of these ideas had been planted by many different thinkers in the past. We just put it together in our own unique way. Also, the ratification of the American Constitution. This wasn't a very simple, cut and dry process. It was a very long and complicated process. One of the best books, but it is very long. Pauline Maier, The Ratification. It's quite the read. But if that's something you're interested in, it's definitely a book that I would recommend. So going forward, I want you to think, one, about the history of ideas. Events don't happen in a vacuum. Things influence and drive history. It's our job to figure out what and why. What are the drivers? What are the impulses that cause historical events to happen the way they do? I want you to think about that. I want you to keep in mind that history is a foreign country. The people in the past left us a written record that we can use to understand them if we sit back and listen. But being angry at them, or being judgmental about them, or in some way trying to say that their social structures were completely wrong just because ours are different, it's a waste of your time. There are things we need to learn from the past. We need to learn about the Holocaust. We need to learn about the 65 million people that died in the communist revolutionary takeover in China so that we can keep these things from happening again. We need to prevent the Holocaust from happening again. So we need to study the mechanisms, the driving forces that happened, that allowed these events to occur. That's how we can benefit our society, by studying history. And we can't do that if we try to judge or interpret history through very strict biases, through very strict constructs. The attempt to interpret everything through one lens is going to blind us to the wider reality. So we do need to open up our perspectives and let the people in the past talk to us. So going forward, please reach out to me. Email me if you have any questions or concerns. I'm always available. And I'll be reaching out to you guys through the discussion board. And I can't wait to see how you guys do in this class. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.